We spend years trying to learn newer things and acquiring skills that might finally help us do something. But often we find ourselves lost in the process trying to utilize these skills we have learned in a more engaging way when we don't get the results we feel we deserve. Often I see people around me getting discouraged in this increasingly competitive world when certain things don't go our way. And as students, we put in a lot of hard work and effort into learning things which are new to us, and we naturally expect good grades in return. Unfortunately, we are not always rewarded. But do we always need to put in so much work so that we don't leave any time for other things in our life? Hey guys, Shavik here. I'm a second year computer science student studying at the University of Manitoba, and in today's video we'll be looking at an age-old problem of trying to learn new things and how we can use the two main evidence-based study techniques to efficiently learn new content. So the two main ways of evidence-based study are active recall and spaced repetition. These two methods together have been proven to be one of the more effective ways to learn new content and remember things longer. In this video, we'll first look at what these two really fancy terms actually mean, and then we'll dive in depth on how to actually implement them in our day-to-day lives. So what do active recall and spaced repetition actually mean? Active recall basically says that we should be testing ourselves all throughout the learning process so that we kind of know where the problem lies with a certain topic and we understand which part of a certain topic requires a little more attention. The way we do this is by using an app called Quizlet, or in general just by using a flashcard. Now if you're not familiar with a flashcard, they're essentially just a piece of paper. We kind of write the answers to the questions that we have on one side of the paper, and on the other side we write down the questions. Now since actually going paperless a year back, I don't really have any flashcards with me. However, my friend decided to be nice and gave me one of these, and here's how we write something on them. Maybe something like, what is my favorite beverage? And on the back, the answer would be something like coffee. The main idea of using a flashcard is actually pretty simple. As we are kind of scrolling through the topics on a textbook or on our notes, we write down the important questions that we feel might be asked on that topic, along with the answers on the card. Once we are done going through the topic and understood kind of like the broader picture, we are supposed to revise all the questions that we have written down and try to answer as many as possible without actually seeing the results. So what ends up happening is we start linking every question to the correct answer, and when we actually see that question on an exam paper, it becomes much easier for all of us to recall the correct answer in that very short amount of time. But as you might have guessed, the process of learning and memorizing loads and loads of information is not that simple. And that kind of brings us to our next topic of spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is pretty simple. Essentially, all it says is we need to properly space out all of our study sessions. There needs to be a gap for our brain to actually forget a few things so that when we come back to the same topic, it doesn't feel as boring and we end up having to relearn a few things based on that information that we had already learned. Although the space or gap in our studies might seem like a very negative thing to do, it actually helps us to be a little more engaged with the materials when we try to relearn some of the topics we covered in that material. So all of the research and evidence points to the same conclusion that two 20-minute long sessions with a 10-minute gap between them is actually more effective than one long 50 or an hour long session. Now the way we can track this is by using an app like Flora that I've been using for a long time. You can check that out in my previous video where I also mentioned 4 other productivity apps for students. So what that small gap does is it allows our brain to relax a little and prepare itself for more input of information going forward. An article published by the New York Times actually showed evidence that we burn around 300 calories every hour we study, which is quite a lot of energy to lose without actually doing any physical activity. So it is important to understand that it is natural to feel tired and exhausted after a really long focused study session, especially one before a final. And that is why spaced repetition is such a great way to actually study compared to any other study technique. So finally, let's talk about how to implement both the study techniques and kind of make it a habit. Before we actually understand how to implement the following methods, let's talk about the very important topic on the concept of flow. Last year, as I was studying for my finals and I still had a very long list of things I had to cover, I started to wonder how do some people go into these long, intense 9 to 10 hour work sessions without actually being distracted by fairly mediocre distractions like our notifications on our phones. Upon doing some research and digging through the internet, I came across this very interesting article on the concept of flow. The concept of flow basically explains how some people go into this very deep hole of intense concentration to get the work at hand done and to complete tasks like they have never done before. This allows some of the greatest athletes to break world records or artists to create masterpieces. In our case, students to study for hours a day with absolute concentration. In the 1960s, there was this guy called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and he wanted to look into this phenomenon, and so he went out and interviewed fellow artists, musicians, and sports people, and found out the cause behind it. He went on to define flow as a state in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else matters, and the experience is so enjoyable that they will continue doing it even at a far greater cost. This explains how some people, for example our favorite footballers, kind of want to go back to playing even when they have just experienced a very tragic injury. So he basically went on to explain how any human being can attain such a state of mind and passion for their work, but that should really be a topic for another video. But to summarize, he basically says that if we have a certain clarity of goal or an end objective in our mind, it naturally becomes a lot easier for us to complete that task a lot quicker. It doesn't matter what kind of objective we set for ourselves. It can be something like a small micro objective or even a larger vision. Objectives like what exactly we want to get done in this particular day, or what is the point of sitting on this desk and going through the textbooks, are all very important questions that we could be asking ourselves in order to attain that state of flow. This flow of sitting with our books for an hour or two every single day for the next 30 days will actually help us become a little more aware of the entire process of learning something new repeatedly and incorporating some of the study methods I spoke about in this video in our day-to-day lives. This brings us to the end of this video. Now if you enjoyed it and had a good time for a few minutes, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future videos, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.